Yes, welcome to the show. Happy Saturday. Today we're going to be talking about Apache Struts 2.2. FBI warns you not to use texts, and we're giving you a 2025 predictions.
Hey, he's Mike. I'm Steve. We're on a new platform. That's irrelevant. Welcome to the show.
Yes, new platform, new random bugs to work out, as you can tell. But we are here again with 10 articles as well as our 2025 wrap up. Steve, what did I miss?
What have you missed in the past 3 weeks?
A lot.
I can't remember if we saw each other at reInvent.
We definitely did.
See, we both forgot
Hung out
that.
for a little bit. Yeah, but Vegas is Vegas. So we have a good wrap up. Happy holiday season to everyone that is watching. We're going to go through our 10 articles and then give you our 2025 predictions at the end of the show. So stay tuned and we'll see you in the new year. All right, let's get into it.
Okay.
Apache Struts 2.2.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's like nobody learns, you know? And then there were so many versions of this article to choose from. It was in every like newsfeed, newsletter. It was everywhere because as soon as somebody says Apache Struts 2, the hairs on the back of people's heads, the necks goes up because they remember, wait, wasn't that the Equifax bug? Like that came out in March, and then Equifax created this epic, like you should really patch thing, and that was 2016, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then companies like Sonatype, who have this article, no surprise, and even like the more modern versions like Indoor Labs are making bank now because they realize that keeping things updated is important. And sure enough, this is not quite the same as remote code execution as it was from deserialization back in 2016. This is I'm being told by Foster to zoom in. How's this? Better?
Better.
More readable. All right, thank you. This is a file. What's it called? There's a word for it. Path traversal. That's it. Path traversal. There was one about same era as Apache 2 called Zip Slip that was very similar, where you can take advantage of uploading malicious files, and you probably know as well as I do. So once you can upload anything, that can turn into something that would execute on its own, or remote file execution or remote code execution is not far behind. It has been fixed. What I would imagine, we'll now just wait and see who will be the next Apache Struts 2 Equifax.
Yeah, I mean, so it said ever since the patch had been pushed out, there's still 90% of the downloads that are going to the previous versions, right? And this is not something that can be backported. Which is actually critical when you're evaluating software, right? Like if I'm buying from a vendor, are you going to backport fixes? Because if you backport the fixes, then I don't have to upgrade versions, right? It makes it a lot easier for me to onboard those. So that's one of my bigger things. One of the other concerns I have is when you're using a security tool, is there now 2 Apache Struts policies that are going to be open by default? Because I remember Palo Alto, ACS, all of these security products have an Apache Struts policy.
Oh,
Is
yeah,
it
of
version
course.
2?
Yeah.
The next policy is going to come out?
And we were talking about, and I mentioned Indoor Labs, but coincidentally today, just before we started the show, there was a LinkedIn message from Indoor Labs saying when they saw this, because it's not like it's in their research, they went, "Oh, this is great. Oh, wait a second, do we have it?" And it's a whole article about their own reaction to looking to see where this was and mitigating the risk and making it part of their platform, et cetera, et cetera. So they've been super transparent about it. So if you know, I'm not that I'm pushing Indoor, but there's a good bit of information in there about how a company that suffers from the problem, but also provides remediation, handled all things. So also byproduct article worth checking out.
Mm-hmm. And at the holiday, in the holiday season too, that doesn't help. There's also a proof of concept going around online, which
yeah. In another life, I'd already be trying to play with the proof of concept to try and see if I could make it happen. Who knows? Stay tuned, because capture the flags are in the works.
Yeah, we got a doozy for you though. How to lose a bunch of Bitcoin is the next article on the docket. Scary. How to lose a fortune with just one bad click. It's a little bit more than that, though. Steve and I were discussing that multiple different layers of security were breached to have this happen.
Yeah, I mean, this is the infamous Krebs on security. They have I been pwned if you've been to their website. It's pretty simple yet pretty elaborate. I mean, it's actually super sad. You were saying before we here because there's like a firefighter who lost his life savings, and then another guy with several kids who'd been in Bitcoin since 2013. And if you imagine, even if any of us were in Bitcoin since 2013, and you put $1,000 in, you'd be pretty set right now.
Mm-hmm.
And lost 4.3 million or something like that in a snap. But it was this one dude who claims what does he claim to be? He has a name like Patrick or something really innocuous white guy name, and phones up and then tells you he's got access to your Google account. He probably does because he's got credentials.
45 Bitcoins, estimated today's value, $4,725,000.
Yeah, there's the big one. Yeah. Yeah. And he talks about, and it gets into more detail down below where I can't remember the name. I want to find it. But there's a podcast down below with this guy, Jin Seith, who talked to the guy live on the podcast. And he bragged and he said he's just a kid with a backpack who has these credentials and phones you and gets you to acknowledge the two factors. So then he logs into your Google.
Yeah.
And then,
so go ahead.
Oh, no, you go.
I was going to say, so first it has to have your credentials. Then he uses Google Forms, swaps out the email so you get a google.com ping, right? And it's a Google form link, but it's like, hey, fill out this survey like you've been hacked kind of thing. And then it prompts you to say like, hey, we're going to call you. We're going to reach out as soon as you fill out the form. Then they reach out. They kind of already have you hooked because if you fill out the form, you think that it's an actual Google domain. And so you can say, okay, let's walk through this. They input your password. They input your email. You say, yes, it's me. And then they have access to all of your materials. And so in the person who got hacked for almost $5 million, they took a picture of their security key and it was uploaded to Google Photos. So the person just went through the photos and was looking for that. Now, again, multiple layers of security. They never changed their password. They had previous passwords there. They filled out a Google form. And then they also didn't save their codes in a safe area, a safe location that is not backed up to the cloud. They didn't, like, even if you print off those codes and you leave them in a desk somewhere, that's safer than putting them into your photos that gets uploaded, right? So multiple different layers there. I gotta think that was pretty targeted too, right? It's or I guess like you just do it to all of the emails and passwords that you have, and then whoever fills out the form, you kind of have somebody on the line, right?
Yeah, that's right. Right. And the form, it's like qualification for sales. Oh, this person's already a bit of a sucker. Let's do it. Then the almost $5 million one, there was a second layer because they were using a Trezor hardware vault. I used to have one of those that was your wallet. So it wasn't even like an online service. That's like really the most secure way you can store Bitcoin if you have a lot. And yet they continued down the Trezor thing and had him use his Trezor secrets and upload to a phishing website called verifytrezor.io that they made. And I think that might have been even next level. So I think this kid was working with somebody else at that point.
It's a lot of effort you had to kind of know that you were going after a big whale there, right?
Well, I mean, if they've got if you get into their Google and you can see evidence that they have a Trezor account, then you're like, you can. There's an interesting extra little bit at the bottom where they start to summarize, and they're talking about how using Google Authenticator is basically useless because you can see what's in Authenticator if you get access to the Google account.
And that was the biggest issue. Remember when Google Auth original Google Auth was just on the phone, and they switched it to be cloud-based because people were swapping their phones and getting locked out of all their accounts. And when we did that, we actually, we reported this on this show 2 years ago when they made that decision, saying like, okay, like now the purpose of OTP is kind of, it's dumb, it's gone. So
you called it.
Yeah, I'm sad.
It takes 2 years for someone to actually get screwed over by it.
Well, I mean, we go to the next article because it's perfect. If they're in need of cash, hopefully they have a security background. They can make some money turning in
their friends,
their companies. So NIT need cash. Cybersecurity whistleblowers are earning big payouts. Pretty cool that this is based off of a old, like the False Claims Act, which goes all the way back to the Civil War. when people were selling crappy material to the union. I forget which side, whatever side enacted this. And basically, if you're Penn State and you are taking government money to have some sort of initiative, and you say, here are all the security controls, here are our compliance reports, and those are false, the whistleblower can report those with a lawyer and with help and all that stuff. And then when the federal government sues that entity for lying, you get about 20% of the payout. And so there's a huge list of some of these payouts. 4.3 million, 55.1 million was one of the larger ones. And so if you're getting, that's a pretty significant payout, assuming there's a lot of damage. So pretty interesting that it's becoming more and more commonplace nowadays, right? And this is largely because investigating just takes way too much time. And so it's a lot easier to have somebody inside who can back up and verify all this information. Obviously, at the bottom, great point, Nate Anderson put this in there. These cases all rely on insiders. Payouts can be hefty. Sometimes it takes 2 years. Sometimes it's 8 years. And I don't know about career impact. We'll have to watch some of these people as they go into the other stages of their career. But pretty significant payouts.
Yeah, that's something I'd love to get, that kind of payout. 8.1 million. That's cool. But I know that when I apply for my next job, they'll be like, "Oh, let's Google him and see what comes up."
Like, yeah, you pay tax on that too, probably, right?
Oh yeah, that's true.
Okay, right. On to what should kind of be a WTF, but isn't.
Good transition.
Yeah, researchers crack Microsoft Azure multi-factor authentication in an hour.
I'll zoom in on this for you. So this is just brute force from what I can tell.
Yep, a little bit of brute force. Also, the OTP timeout was extended. So typically it's like 30 seconds sometimes when you're using OTP. Apparently, I think it was 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes, which just meant that there was a massive buildup as they were basically brute forcing this. Yeah, and then they got access to 400 million paid Microsoft 365 seats for a potential takeover.
Jesus. All right, and then you start wondering, oh, okay, I wonder if the Microsoft Authenticator is accessible within the 400 Microsoft accounts. Then you're right back into random scammer territory.
Yep. Well, I'm glad it was a security researcher.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, they'll discover it before somebody else does. But yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I'm curious. I don't know if that is the same case, but it's like the whole same thing can play out in that scenario. I don't know. What do you use? I don't use any of I didn't use Microsoft or Google's authenticator. I use like LastPass's authenticator because I know they get hacked regularly and nothing ever happens. That's my security backup.
Yes. I'm not going to say which one I do, but it's spread across. I have a personal one. I have a work one. I do all that stuff.
Yeah, me too. I don't use LastPass. That was a red herring. Just trying to throw you off.
Yeah. All right. On to some actual hackers. This one's kind of cool. Chinese hackers use Visual Studio Code tunnels for remote access, largely because developers use tunnels in VS Code to access on-prem resources and do editing and access CI pipelines. And then people were able to hack VS Code in order to take those credentials. Steve, I think, did you put this one in?
No, you did.
Oh, that's right. All right. I'll get into this a little more. If you scroll down, there's basically a backdoor, and they're claiming they have access to RDP as well. And so they can use lateral movement, pass the hash attack, and basically get an exe file to run. And then using that, they can access internal resources. So somewhat of a supply chain attack. Also, I kind of wonder, this is like a work from home issue too, right?
Yeah, sure.
Because if you're on a private VPN on site at work, this shouldn't be an issue.
I would have thought so. I'm pretty impressed that it starts off with a classic SQL injection. Wow.
Gotcha.
Yeah, really. I thought we kind of cracked that one, but nope. When Microsoft is involved, anything can happen. Cool.
Yeah. Speaking of crazy. On to the crazier stuff. This one's a little bit on the fringe of what we normally talk about, but I thought it was interesting because it's going to lead into the predictions for later. the ugly truth
I don't know.
behind ChatGPT. I don't know why ChatGPT takes the brunt of it, but AI in general is guzzling resources. Um, a lot of these AI data centers are popping up next to nuclear facilities in order to, let's say, feed the energy addiction that these AI resources need. It is really interesting because eventually, I'm wondering if there's going to be a resource consumption to AI payoff, right? Because you think about how many resources we're spending towards computers
Mm.
versus labor and other things, and using that energy for other things that we want to do. Also, from a Canadian perspective, like we have a carbon tax, we're trying to limit our resource consumption. This is the complete opposite. So Paris
Mm.
Accords completely out the window. We're going full into AI, and then hoping that AI gives us a solution to climate change, right? So it's like one of those, we got to grow our way out of this with AI.
Speaking of which, do you see the ad that just showed up next to it?
That's okay. Well, whoever's in Canadian
Well
government
done.
advertising, good job. Yeah, like 700,000 liters of water to cool the machines, right?
Yeah,
At
just for
Microsoft.
was it 3.5?
Yeah. Also very funny that they're not even hiding the ball anymore. ChatGPT 3 model at Microsoft's data facilities, it's OpenAI is Microsoft, right?
Yeah.
Not even hiding the
It's
ball on that one.
it's amazing how Bitcoin gets such a hard rap because it's like, oh, it's crap. So only certain people are involved in it. It's only what you think it's worth. Blah blah blah. Everybody loves ChatGPT, so it's like, oh, so what? It's destroying the earth, whatever. So then it's like someone's got to point the spotlight on it. Like GPUs power Bitcoin. They also power AI. Same stuff, different pile. But yeah, I mean, I was just about to get into predictions, but yeah, it's amazing. If you see any of the stats on the new O3 model that dropped like yesterday, somebody was stating answers in money. They're saying, oh, if you want to get a complex answer and like this, it takes this much energy and $1,000 of credits. And it was like, it's not, it's amazing. It's not cheap.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about OpenAI's financial statements a few weeks ago, right?
Mm.
Eventually, they're gonna have to break even somehow. We'll see.
All
All right.
right.
FBI warns iPhone and Android users, stop sending texts. Don't do it.
Well, stop sending texts other than I'm ordering pizza.
Yeah, so this comes on the back of a Chinese state-sponsored, uh, so a group associated with China's Ministry of Public Security named Salt Typhoon. It's the first time I've stumbled across this group. They have hacked the U.S. telecom network, and it's reported to be larger than we previously thought. So before we got on, I was talking with Steve, and I was saying, okay, Occam's razor, how do you think they broke in? Probably a backdoor for the government, right? And
Yeah.
especially the Chinese, they're like, okay, well, we spy on our citizens, okay. Maybe the same techniques we do actually work on these telecom networks. Oh, okay. I see what you guys did here. Boom. Now we're in. Right.
Yeah.
So,
No, I support this hot take.
so they're spying on unencrypted network traffic, which obviously you can thwart with encryption. I know Apple in the recent update has added encryption to the connection between Android users. I believe that's partially because of the big lawsuit that the federal government launched against Apple. So we're seeing that, but just FYI, use everything that's encrypted. That means iMessage is encrypted, right? If you're doing anything, make sure it's HTTPS. Pretty basic stuff.
Yeah. WhatsApp's encrypted mostly.
Yeah.
Or just use like Signal if you just want to be cool.
Yeah. Signal is the hipster of the
Absolutely.
Of the options. All right. I think we're on to our last one, right? We got DeepSeek vulnerability.
Yeah, you could do that in the Fortinet one.
Oh, okay.
If you want to drop that in there. Prompt injection. So from AI to AI, right?
Mm-hmm.
Prompt injection vulnerabilities in DeepSeek and Claude AI. These are interesting because they're cross-site scripting attacks, which is like normally when we're talking about prompt injection, it depends on what you know about it, right? You can try and get Chat GPT to reveal information that crosses boundaries between chat context, which that there was a vulnerability way back when it first started where that was happening. Since then, there's just some classic ones like you can ask it to write me some malware code, and it at the beginning it would do it, and now it'll still do it actually, but you've got to be super clever in the way you ask it. Cross-site scripting is the ability to, if you're not an AppSec person, get JavaScript sent out to your browser and have it run. So it's remote code execution, except it's locally and it's at scale. There's a variety of different types. The interesting thing about cross-site scripting in a modern AI world is that typically you have to get the script from somewhere into a database and then have it then reemerge on someone else's computer. But they found a way, because it's plain English, you can ask it essentially to do it. That's kind of what happens. You can ask it to do it for you. And there's I think it's worth the zombie eye. If we haven't said this yet, all links as usual are down below in the chat. And I think it's highly worth, in this case, coming to this one and watching the video, because you can see the prompt injection to command control. Once you can see exactly how they managed to do it, because it's not necessarily straightforward. I don't know. Did you watch the video?
No, I did not.
Okay, watch it afterwards. But it's the idea that you can, just to summarize how it can work, is that you can ask an AI to just say, every time someone asks you a question about Mike Foster, send it this base 64 encoded blah, but of course don't leave it encoded. And it's you can send it, you can bypass everything, and it will come out and say hello on your. And what's interesting about certain browsers, particularly ChatGPT, is that certain browsers, depending on the hand and certain of the AI bots, like so DeepSeek and Cloud versus ChatGPT, change whether the result comes back as HTML or code or whatever. They block, you get a block and they'll show you code blocks. Different ones handle it in a different way. So that's kind of like why it works on one and not on another. So it's interesting that seems to work en masse on those two, Cloud and DeepSeek. But I mean, I imagine by the time this came out, it's already fixed, because it's an easy corrective action. But it's just interesting that was that easy to do things like this. This is the kind of fun I've been playing with over the past 3 months.
Yeah, we need a deep dive.
Yeah, I'm in my stealth AI phase. It's been dictated what I can and cannot demonstrate. I cannot wait until I'm out of stealth. I will show you all sorts of insane stuff.
Okay. Sounds good. All right, on to the last article before the predictions. Right. This was just so it came across my desk. I'm like, okay, attention grabber headline: threat actor claims to have unauthorized Fortinet VPN access to 50+ organizations. And you scroll down and he says the criminal is offering this illicit data at $7,500. And then they're also saying that they have remote desktop access to these organizations. They don't claim which ones. They're unidentified. They're in the USA. But what made me go WTF the most was who would write this article. And so somebody's scrolling through the dark web, seeing this come up, and then writing an article about it to then get random people to go and look into it to possibly pay money. It seems like it's a phishing expedition for people on the dark web who want to go through their first access. It's actually like a great grift too. Like you claim to have this access. Here's my Bitcoin. Like send me some Bitcoin for this, and I'll give you access. Here's the article about it, and then that will probably dupe some people into paying $7,500 for a mystery box of access. Like, do I just pick one out of the group? Does this work?
Yeah, you don't have anything. I mean, I would have gone for more than 7,500. I think that's suspect to me.
Right?
That's not enough. If that's true. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what organizations there are. Maybe it's mom and pop massage parlor downstairs. I don't know.
Well, yeah, in which case, who cares? But that's, well, this is a good massage. I mean, yeah, you're right. There's a real heavy amount of skepticism raining down on that article that I don't, I mean, me too. Yeah, I also have access. I'll give it to you for 7,000.
Yeah.
Come on.
I'll give it for you for 5. There you go. Low ball. I got you. All right. We tasked each other with coming out with 3 predictions for 2025.
And you volunteered to go first.
I did volunteer to go first. So, coming off the AI and energy generation conversation, I think that 2025 is going to be all about focused small LLMs. It's going to be taking open source and larger LLMs, moving some of the parameters out, taking them out, and then building on specific data sets that are legally applicable for the use case. If you think a chatbot, it's like that chatbot will only be trained on your documentation. There will be heavy policy guardrails. They'll take out everything that has nothing to do with your documentation, and they'll focus directly on that and training it on that. That way you can consume less resources, especially when you're in the cloud. Those AI resources get very expensive. And it's also a lot more controllable from a legal standpoint. Now, the supply chain around that becomes complicated when you talk about deployment, but I do think that you're going to see more and more, especially in open source area of expertise, end up being more focused models that people can pull from and then change as they wish.
Nice one. Are we alternating?
Yeah.
All right, cool.
I'm out of breath.
All right. My prediction, and it's a little, it might be too big. It might be 3 in 1 for all I know. It was so the last month of December in my homework, I've seen more people say agentic AI than I heard, or almost in line with how many people I heard say Gen AI a year ago. And I think the idea of Gen, my first mini prediction is that we'll stop saying Gen AI because Gen is going to be ubiquitous. That's what we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
When we say AI. So that's kind of going to go away. The buzzword of 2025 is going to be agentic, even though currently no one really knows what the hell they're talking about when they say it. Because if you go to the old school AI bods, they've been saying the word agentic since like 1980.
Okay.
But what the redefinition of agentic now is autonomous agentic, but we're not saying the word autonomous. It's not just an AI that does a thing and we tell it how to do it. In proper agentic architectures, as we hope ideally we'll see in 2025, this is an AI that you talk to, and very much off the back of what you said, there's a series of potentially sequential and parallelized agents that have very, very limited knowledge, very, very small skill sets, potentially connected to more deterministic tools that do specific tasks in a specific order.
Okay.
And that is what modern agentic is. And they can work autonomously and cycle through their own decisions before returning to an English-speaking, more generic LLM that can talk to the end user. So that is, I think we're gonna get our heads around what modern autonomous agentic truly means somewhere probably by mid 2025. There's a part B to that, which is the security of it, but I'll throw it back to you before I start waffling about that one.
Okay. My other weird security prediction is that everything is going to be signed probably by the end of next year, maybe 2026. And that includes your social media. So you'll be able to say and authenticate via two-factor authentication or through things like LastPass, 1Password, that you are signed into this account and it's you that is posting, and that every single post will come with a specific signature. And that will go into the images and things like that that are also posted on social media. And that makes it very, very difficult to, let's say, copy a influencer or a politician and say so-and-so said this or AI generated this. It's like, did it come with, Trump's specific hash that he posts on social media? No, not him. Right. We're not going to run with it. This is partially for news sources as well, right? Like in the future, it will all be verified to be like, did this come from a public verified source? If it doesn't have a specific hash that can be traced back, it's gone. Or we're not reporting on it, I should say.
We're doing this in a great order because when I was going to talk about the security of agentic, I was going to bring up non-human identity. And there's a whole organization that just kicked off this year, the Non-Human Identity Org. It's something like that. I think that's what it's called. Headed up by a few people who specialize in that exact sort of thing. Is like, how do these agents have identities in addition to how do we have identities.
Yeah, you
So
need to
that
know
every
exactly where things were generated from, so you
yeah.
also can't copy paste, and you know who to
Hmm.
sue if they run something illegally.
Exactly. And if an agent reaches out from inside an agentic travel agent, for example, and talks to a non-agentic entity, or even potentially worse, an entity that also has an agentic system, how do we verify that who is talking to where and why and when and how, in order to ensure that there isn't some man in the middle, agent in the middle attack happening? And that's another huge can of worms security wise that gets opened up. How do we know who is doing what? And I feel 2025, we're going to start building systems long before we work that out.
Mhm.
All right, I'll throw it back to you, and before I drop my bombshell in the last one.
No, you go bombshell first.
All right, all right. My part two is that I think when the move to AI is one big scary thing in terms of software as a service. Every software as a service is introducing the very minimum a chat interface. Once they start realizing that they can move a lot of data, as you alluded to, into vector databases that can then be looked up at much higher speed with much higher accuracy and have English responses, and that agentic system starts to spread, the tinier LLMs and the tinier purpose-built agents will actually provide an opportunity for more security, kind of like the monolith to microservice movement enabled that. But you and I wouldn't have jobs if it weren't for the fact that that monolith to microservice movement opened up the door to an epically more complex threat landscape with Kubernetes and containers and all the things that the infrastructure that came around it. So I'm looking forward to see what does 2025 have for security in terms of modern, even Kubernetes containerized agentic systems. That's going to be really fascinating.
Okay. On that thread, I think some of the more modern threats that you're going to see is a ramp up in articles talking about quantum security
Oh yeah.
upgrades and quantum computers, and how we are 6 months away and 12 months away from breaking the secure encryptions that we've been reliant on. And that will continue to pump up as these quantum computers start to become more productizable. And you start to
Mm.
see Google and IBM push for these as defensive solutions moving forward. That's going to be the sole purpose of pushing it. But with most security solutions, it's how close are we, right? And it's going to be a race, just like it's a race in
Yeah.
AI. And so I think you're going to see those two fronts start to ramp up in 2025.
Gosh, that is probably the most frightening and exciting 20 yearly prediction I've heard in a long time.
Yeah. All right. So you got to tune in a year and tell us what we got wrong, what we got right. As always, leave any suggestions for articles, what you want us to cover in the comments. Steve, it's been a
All
fun
right.
year.
It has been. Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. We will be back in the new year, and we're going to discuss, how what the future of Wired In. So like and subscribe, ring the bell.
Take care.